Hi everybody, Robin Nichols back with another exciting Photoshop Elements tutorial. Of course it's exciting. We're going to talk about text in this particular tutorial because when you understand and can master the use of the text tool, it opens up a massive amount of other things that you can do with your images, such as making business cards or greeting cards or letterheads or a whole range of sort of stationery or text, but even just postcards. Now, one of the things we have to do when we start off is decide how big our artwork is going to be. And I'm making a postcard, so I want to make sure that it's the right size. So the first things first is we need to go to the image size and just check it out. And so in inches, yep, it's going to be the right size. This is 5 by 8. Now, the reason I'm showing you this first up before we've even headed over to the text tool over here is very simple. If you have a raw file directly, an unedited file directly out of your camera, it may be 18, it may be 20, maybe 20 plus megabytes, okay? So when I start using the text tool, my text is going to look extremely small because, of course, it's a massive file. Here the file is only 8 by 5 inches, so when I actually use the text tool, simply by choosing T for text, okay, T for text, and then clicking in the image once, and then typing, okay, and then typing, it types the text in that I decided that I needed. So, for example, it remembers the font that I used before, which is called Dead Secretary, and it's the font size, which is 60 points. So it comes in at a good size. Very often what will happen is when you type into a picture, it comes in at about 4 points, so small you can barely see it. So what you have to do is just go back to the image resize. Image size, make sure that the resolution is 300 pixels per inch. Okay, and you do that with the resample unchecked. Just type in 300 pixels, and then you just type in the new width and the new height in either of these sizes, and it resamples the picture down. It usually takes pixels out in order to make the final print size correct. Still, it makes mistakes. Look, I've just typed in and it's gone fair lane, and I've got the FAI bit disappearing. So I'm going to use the move tool here to click actually on the words and drag it out. Just be careful you don't accidentally click on something else. All right, and you may have like auto select layer, and you may just sort of be clicking on the background layer and nothing happens. So make sure you physically click on the letters and you get it to work. Now, I'll show you how to change the type color. And this is actually called the horizontal type tool. I'm supposed to give it its proper name, but I call it the text tool. In order to select text to make the typeface bigger or smaller, different color, different font, all those characteristics that we like to change in our images, we just double click it. Do not click and drag, because all that does is create a new layer somewhere else. Okay, and in fact, clicking and dragging allows me to create a thing called a text box. And we use a text box when we're, for example, typing loads of text, and we want to restrict it to those edges of the box, and we can obviously make the box go bigger to accommodate more text. It's very useful to have a text box. For example, if you want to copy and paste data or text from a Word document and you just paste it into Photoshop Elements, you can do that. You can even use a text box in conjunction with a dictation software, such as Dragon Naturally, and you can just talk into a microphone as I am now, and it'll just type into a text box. But the nice thing about text box, of course, is it restricts the spill of text to a certain physical area. If we just click once in the image, that's just going to be a line of text. No problem at all. And of course, we have to then physically put a return in there if we have more. Okay. So forward fairly. Now, one of the reasons it's going off to the left is, I suspect, I have center justification here. So if I choose left justification, whenever I put in extra text, it's going to go off to the right-hand side. So here's the word forward fair lane, and I'm again to select it by double-clicking. I'm going to choose, I think we're going to put this back into the white mode. It's a little bit hard because it's gone off the screen there. There we go, so forward fair lane. I've chosen a really funky typeface for this simply because I like the funky typeface. This is one that I downloaded off the internet and loaded into my computer, so it's a freebie. So it looks pretty cool. So don't forget, you can just get back in there at any time, and do fancy stuff like that. You can just put a simple return in just to get it to fit on the page a little bit more. We can also do something like this. I can select one word, and we can change the leading. Ooh, that sounds fancy. What's the leading? The leading is this. It allows me to, here we go, here's a trick. It allows me to separate one sentence from another sentence, providing you've got a return in there. Now, you see what I've done here? I've gone and highlighted the word leading. Now, if I roll my scroll wheel on my mouse, I can just type in leading point by point. And it's a really good way of getting a lot more accurate results simply by, that's it, whoops, let's just undo that, press T for text, by just scrolling in an amount, Ford Fairlane. Let's just offset that a little bit. Okay, so that's working quite nicely. Now, of course, when you select your text, you have the luxury of not only being able to change the font type, you can change, for example, things like the left, center, or the right justification. You can add a faux bold, and what you do that, why you do that is, for example, something like Dead Secretary. It has no different font styles, and so typically, you know, a well-designed font will have an italic version, a bold version, an ultra bold version, a thin version, and so on and so forth. This one, because this has been made by an art designer or a graphic designer or an art studio somewhere, has just basically it's on or it's off. So if I wanted to make it a bit bolder, I can possibly click on the fake bold. There we go, and it's actually stuffed it up completely. So I probably would never do that. I can italicize it a little bit because I don't have an italic in the general font styles drop-down menu here. I can change the size, the leading, the color, plus the anti-aliasing. And anti-aliasing basically makes it look sharper and crisper should we need to do that. I don't really need to do this. It doesn't really matter either way on this one because it's a pretty funky, distressed look text. Okay, the move tool then is pretty important because then I can click it and I can actually move this anywhere I like. And you can see here that putting text into an image is pretty important. The placement is very important because, of course, if I go and stick it here, it becomes very hard to read. If I stick it up in the black sky area, it's actually pretty cool. And I can read it very clearly. So, you know, text placement is very, very important. Let's just go there. Ford Fairlane, I think that's probably a double space there. No, that's a single space. Fantastic. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. Now I'm going to show you a little trick here, which I was just experimenting before I started here, was if I wanted to select that and, of course, give it the same color as a color in the photo. How do you suppose I do that? Well, I go into the tool options, and as you saw down the bottom here, there's the color button. And I can click on the color button, and, you know, I can probably approximate it by choosing a red or something, but that's not terribly, you know, 100% accurate, is it? But when I actually make it match exactly what we got in here, what we need to do is down the bottom here, and I'm going to have to shift this whole thing up the window here in order for us to see what we're doing here. And it seems to have left it behind. So over here you can see this little palette. Actually, the palette's kind of unplugged. I'm going to choose this little fella here. I'm not going to save the changes to the swatches. And I'm just going to click on the little drop down. I might just do that again so you can see it. So if I click on here, there's a little round color picker. Okay, and the color picker allows me to obviously choose millions of different shades of all sorts of colors. But the really cool thing about the color pickers is if I move the cursor away from the color picker, look, I get a little dropper tool, and that means that I can pick, for example, you know, the yellow off the chrome here and click OK. So now Ford Fairlane is written in yellow. Or alternatively, again, let's go back into the text tool, select it, choose the color, click on that little blue thing, little rainbow thing, and let's just choose, ooh, I don't know, anything. This looks pretty cool. We could try orange. Orange is pretty good, or even the red in the buildings in the background. And click OK, and then click OK. So now we've got, you know, very groovy color. It's the same color as the floodlighting on the buildings in the background, simply because I've color picked it. So a very neat little feature. And you can do that with most of these tools in Photoshop Elements. You can just choose a color and click it. One more thing before we go is, generally with things like text, if we want to make them stick out a little bit more, we can do stuff to them. And in order to do stuff to them, we must first have that text layer highlighted. The second thing is we can use the effects palette. Okay, that's really impressive, isn't it? There's only one effect. I don't want to do that. I don't want to add an old paper effect to the text layer. But what I would like to do is try a style. And you know, one of the things that confuses most people when they begin this is there are 300 different styles and effects in this program. So where the heck do you start? I'm going to go for a style, and a style is going to apply to a text layer. And I'm going to choose drop shadows. And I'm just going to show you this if I just double click it. Now, almost nothing happened on the word Ford Fairlane because, of course, I'm putting a black shadow onto a black background, duh. But if I put it over here, you can see what I've done. So immediately that stands out from the crowd, doesn't it? So you can use these different styles to create some quite neat effects. Let me try something like bevel. Okay, so it's beveled the text layer. Try that. Wow, sort of punched it in like that. So that's a little bit funkier. And these are just pre-cooked recipes. That's pretty funky. These are just pre-cooked recipes that Adobe Photoshop Elements gives us. Wacky metallic. Oops. Not all of them work, as you can see here. Inner ridge. That's pretty horrible. Okay. So this is a thing called beveling. And of course you have a whole range of other very funky special effects which I deal with, and it's, oh, there we go, look at that, which I deal with in a separate tutorial. So that very basically is about text. Key points here are: get the resolution of the image correct before you start. You can of course do it afterwards, but then you'll have to go and resize your text. Click text insertion point. Maintain a watchful eye on your layer palette at all time, just to make sure that you don't automatically or don't accidentally create additional text layers and then wonder why you can't, for example, select the word Ford Fairlane because you're working in a different text layer. Don't click and drag because that creates a text box, and we deal with that in another tutorial. Use the tool options down below when you're in the text tool mode, in the horizontal text tool mode, to select your text styles, your bold and your italic, your font, your point size, the leading, which is the gap in between sentences, the justification, and of course a number of other cool little features which we'll deal with in more advanced text tutorials.